What is up, guys? So The Flash Season 6 recently ended. It ended early as Episode 19 was not supposed to be the season finale. There were supposed to be Episodes 20, 21, and 22, which I think a little bit of at least 20 was filmed. It's just that because of the coronavirus, they weren't able to film more of it. And instead of waiting until it's all over and completing the season, they decided to end it here and continue back up in Season 7, which is going to come out in January 2021. Until then, though, I have the task now of ranking things from The Flash, which is something that I do at the end of every year. Not something that I have to do, but something that I really do like doing, and it does get a lot of views typically, like the Arrowverse rankings at the end of the season, so I'm not complaining here. It's just that it is a little bit unfortunate that the seasons have all ended early, so none of them are really as good as maybe they could have been had they had those last couple episodes that they were supposed to have. With this ranking in particular, I wanted to make a ranking video ranking all of the main villains of The Flash, but the Season 6 main villain, Mirror Master or Mirror Mistress, just Ava McCulloch, didn't get those last couple episodes to fully develop, to have her final couple episodes, final showdown with the Flash. It's unfortunate, but there's really nothing we can do, and in this video, I'll be ranking all 9 of the main villains of The Flash from worst to best, regardless of what episodes have yet to be aired, regardless of episodes that were supposed to be aired, just the episodes that we have actually gotten. With that in mind, let's begin with the worst villain from The Flash, which is actually not Mirror Mistress or Mirror Master, whatever. When the second version of Cicada originally debuted, it kind of felt like a breath of fresh air because of how the original Cicada was just not a threat anymore, and then we have this new one who is clearly much more powerful and is at least better at fighting Team Flash. However, that effect quickly faded, and what we were left with was basically Cicada, the exact same thing, just less developed and with worse dialogue. It's just, we ended up with maybe a little bit more of a threatening Cicada, but just overall a slightly worse villain than the kind of bad villain that we already had. So with that in mind, Grace Gibbons is the worst main villain on The Flash, but she's not that much worse than her predecessor. Cicada, the original Cicada, started out as actually a pretty great villain. Like in the early episodes of Season 5, he was very threatening. He had this mysterious thing about him. He worked fairly well. I thought that he brought an intensity to the show that worked very well. However, that ended with episode, I would say, 8, when they basically solved everything. I mean, they almost defeated him, but then they also, they didn't really defeat him. But then Killer Frost just said, it was basically like, Killer Frost can defeat him whenever she wants. So after that point, Cicada became a non-threat. He just kept on coming back over and over again. Team Flash just kept on defeating him over and over again. He kept on escaping over and over again, making him such a boring villain, which is why when Cicada 2 came around, it was a breath of fresh air, even though she ended up being maybe even a worse villain. But the biggest problem with Cicada is definitely just how boring of a villain he was for those episodes, between episode 8 and when he was replaced and killed in like episode 17. It was a whole stretch of episodes where we had such a non-threat of a villain, just a recurring villain who kept on being defeated, kept on coming back, and kept on escaping. It was really tiring, it was really boring, and both Cicadas really are the worst villains that we've gotten from The Flash. The newest main villain from The Flash, Ava McCulloch, aka, actually she's never been given a name. Going off the comics, it would be Mirror Master. However, considering she's gender bent, it could be Mirror Mistress. However, the synopsis for Season 7 does call her Mirror Master, so I guess we're going to go with Mirror Master. But this is actually Evan McCulloch, or at least Mirror Master, as a villain I wanted to see as the main villain of a season for a very long time, especially with how they can explore the Mirrorverse. However, what we ended up getting was, it was kind of boring. Like, I guess I don't really know what I would change about it. Obviously, I don't understand why they gender bent Evan McCulloch. Just leave it as Evan McCulloch. Just leave it as that. But I don't know how much that would have solved it. We ended up with a pretty boring season-long storyline, and Ava McCulloch was honestly a pretty boring villain. I do like her powers a lot. Again, I think that the Mirrorverse is really interesting, and I guess could have been used better, but also it was used fairly well. But overall, I don't know. She ended up being a fairly boring villain, and not as good as all the other villains we haven't gone over yet. The Thinker definitely had a lot of potential. He had the potential to be maybe in like the top 3 of this list because I think the actor, first of all, Neil Sandilands, was really, really good in the role, and his rivalry with Barry Allen, his rivalry with The Flash, was basically good throughout the entire season. That is, when he was played by Neil Sandilands, and this is why he is at number 6 and not higher on the list, because for like half of the season, in fact, I think it was most of the season, they had this genius idea of taking the actor who really, really worked and just not using him for like half of the season and replacing him by other actors and actresses, where in the season the Thinker just put his mind into other metahumans. That, I think, killed the Thinker. Like, he still ended up being a fine villain, but if they didn't do that, if he was played by Neil Sandilands for the entirety of the season, he could have ended up being one of the great villains of The Flash, because like I said, the actor was really good. His rivalry when he was played by Neil Sandilands with Barry Allen was really, really good. He was fairly threatening, and the season-long storyline I don't think was great, but it also wasn't that bad, and I think that if they just didn't do that thing where they put his mind into other characters and have other actors and actresses play him, the Thinker could have been one of the greatest villains on The Flash, and not one of the bottom 4. Season 5 was absolutely not... Season 5 was not lacking in main villains. I mean, I've already gone over 2 of them, the 2 cicadas, but there's also Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, who returned for his second time as the main villain on The Flash, but also his third time as the main villain on an Arrowverse TV show. Like, he was also the main villain in Legends of Tomorrow. But I think that out of those 3 seasons, this is probably his weakest season. Not that he was bad in this season. In fact, he was really, really good, and I would say from here on out, we have only good villains, and everything under it is maybe not nearly as good, but he, I think, was also the weakest he's ever been as the main villain, mostly because I think of his presence. Like, it didn't really appear as much as he should have. He wasn't really the main villain until the last episode, like the second half of the last episode. I think that he was really good. His rivalry with Barry Allen was decent, but also out of the seasons where he was the main villain, like I said already like 2 or 3 times, this was the weakest of the 3. Back when Season 3 ended, I think the general consensus is that Savitar was a step down from the previous 2 villains who have gotten on The Flash. Like, Savitar was not nearly as beloved as Zoom or Reverse Flash, and I think that may be because of maybe speedster fatigue, because they kept on doing the things over and over again that they've already done twice already. However, looking back now, in hindsight is 2020, but anyway, I think that looking back now, Savitar was a pretty great villain, and I don't really understand, other than maybe the speedster fatigue, and like I said, they did the same thing again. Looking back now, I think Savitar was a pretty great villain. I mean, he's got an amazing design, he's got a very threatening voice, a very threatening presence, a decent enough rivalry with the Flash, and while the season-long storyline was not as good as Reverse Flash's, and probably not as good as Zoom's, it was also better than the Thinkers, and better than Cicadas, and better than Mirror Masters, not better than the other 3 villains that I haven't gone over yet, but it is one of the better season-long storylines that we've gotten. So looking back now, Savitar was actually a pretty great villain, and I think deserves to be in the top 4. However, the top 3 is pretty concrete, and I don't think Savitar could make it into there. While Season 6 did give us what is one of the worst villains on The Flash, it also gave us one of the best. Actually, the third worst was the second half, but the third best is actually the first half of the season, which is Ramsey Rosso, aka Bloodwork, who I thought was an amazing villain. First of all, his season-long storyline, which was compounded into 8 episodes, which was definitely to his favor, was really, really good. Like, they never really slowed down, which maybe like for 1 or 2 episodes, but overall, almost every episode was about Bloodwork, and I think that it worked really, really well. His rivalry with Barry Allen and his rivalry with the Flash was definitely really good, up there as one of the best rivalries between the Flash and a villain on the show, and his presence, his threatening level, I think was really, really high when he was in human form, but also when he was in his Bloodwork form, which I think looked really cool. The final showdown between the Flash and Bloodwork was pretty awesome, and overall I think Bloodwork has definitely cemented himself as one of the greatest villains on The Flash, which is pretty awesome because it's rare that in Season 6 they make a new villain that's that good, which is something that Arrow didn't really accomplish, but The Flash did, and I'm glad they gave us yet another great villain with Bloodwork. Hunter Zolomon, aka Zoom, much like Bloodwork, in fact more so than Bloodwork, obviously because he's higher on the list, is one of the greatest villains on The Flash, and certainly I think the second greatest main villain, and he's this good for many reasons. The biggest thing is that he is easily the most threatening and easily the scariest main villain, not only on The Flash, but probably the entirety of the Arrowverse, because of his costume, because of his voice, because of his music, and because of his presence, and because of his overall storyline. He is the scariest and most threatening villain that we've ever gotten, which makes his presence, it works really well because of it, because of how scary he is. His rivalry with Barry Allen, his rivalry with the Flash is definitely really, really good. His season-long storyline is great as well, making him the second best main villain on the Flash, but I wouldn't be surprised if you find him the greatest main villain, because he does have a lot of things. In fact, I think he does a lot of things better than the number one slot, but overall I think that he is at least slightly worse. The first main villain on The Flash is pretty universally agreed upon to be the best, and I am a part of that agreement. I think Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, from Season 1 specifically, is the best main villain on The Flash. I don't think he's as scary as Zoom, and I think there are other things like his design isn't as good as Savitar's, let's say, but there are two things that Reverse Flash does better than any other main villain. One, his rivalry with the Flash, which is way, way better than any other main villain's rivalry, any other villain's rivalry with the Flash, probably any other villain's rivalry with any hero. Second, maybe only, or at least tied maybe, with Oliver Queen and Prometheus. But the second thing is his season-long storyline, which is miles better than any other main villain's season-long storyline on The Flash. It's definitely it's really, really good. So that, the rivalry, and the other things, like while he's not as scary as Zoom, and his design isn't as good as Savitar's, those things are not only less important, but also he does those things fairly well. Like, his design is pretty good, he is fairly threatening, especially in that first season, and overall I think all these things come together to make him, Eobard Thawne, the greatest villain that we've ever gotten on The Flash, in spite of the fact that I think that there are things that other villains do better. He definitely does the most important things the best. So that's it for my ranking for all 9 main villains on The Flash. I know there are a couple main villains, or at least one main villain, who didn't really get a fair shake, and that's Ava McCulloch, aka Mirror Master. Maybe if those 3 episodes aired, she could have been higher in the ranking, but unfortunately that didn't happen, and there's nothing you could do about it. So as of right now, this is the ranking that we got. With that in mind, let me know your ranking in the comments down below, or at least your least favorite and favorite main villains from The Flash, and then maybe your top 5. That's something that I would definitely like to see in the comments. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.